Every hotel room door is a lottery ticket for the housekeeping staff. Most days, they just find dirty towels and an empty minibar. But sometimes, they open the door to something so profoundly weird, it deserves its own police report. We're not talking about a forgotten phone charger. We're talking about live animals, prosthetic limbs, and evidence of very, very questionable life choices. These are the 49 strangest things ever left behind in U.S. hotels. 1. Some people forget a toothbrush, others, a phone charger. But one guest achieved a new level of absent-mindedness by leaving behind a living, breathing, and emotionally significant bonsai tree. This wasn't just a plant. It was an emotional support shrub that the owner, in a frantic phone call, claimed had been their companion for years. For a brief period, the hotel staff treated the miniature tree less like lost property and more like a high-profile hostage. It was given a place of honor at the concierge desk, probably getting better service than most guests, until its distraught parent could be reunited with it. 2. You have to feel for the housekeeper who walked into a room ready to battle dirty towels and was instead greeted by a taxidermied alligator wearing sunglasses. It was propped up by the minibar, exuding an aura of someone who had just finished a 3-day bender in Miami and was contemplating ordering an overpriced bottle of gin. This wasn't just a forgotten item, it was a statement piece. Rather than calling for an exorcist, the hotel management recognized genius when they saw it. The gator became the unofficial mascot for a week, silently judging everyone who walked through the lobby with its cool, dead eyes. 3. Leaning against the nightstand where you might expect to find an umbrella, housekeeping found a prosthetic leg. And this wasn't some old-fashioned wooden peg leg. This was a sleek, state-of-the-art carbon fiber limb that probably cost more than the housekeeper's car. The immediate questions were baffling. Did the owner hop out of the hotel? Do you just forget a part of your own body? The staff respectfully placed it in the lost and found, where it stood like a lonely sci-fi sculpture, a testament to someone who literally left a part of themselves behind before presumably remembering they needed it to walk. 4. Imagine checking into your room, drawing a bath, and discovering you have a roommate. A very slow, very shelled roommate. A live turtle was found having the time of its life in a hotel bathtub, a porcelain paradise far from any pond. The original guest had apparently ghosted their reptilian companion. The housekeeping staff, bless their hearts, adopted the little guy, christening him Speedy, because irony is the spice of life. He was given a 5-star temporary home in a plastic bin until his owner returned, likely facing an awkward conversation about pet abandonment and turtle therapy bills. 5. A reusable water bottle might sound boring, but this one was the physical manifestation of a humble brag. It was absolutely plastered with stickers from every national park, trendy city, and obscure roadside attraction imaginable. It was less a bottle and more a portable resume of a person's adventures. You could practically hear it whispering, "I've been to more places than you'll ever go." The hotel staff felt like archaeologists uncovering the artifacts of a forgotten civilization, piecing together the epic journey of a professional wanderer who apparently couldn't hold on to their gear. 6. Forget finding a forgotten wallet. One hotel's lost and found became an armory when a guest left behind a fully functional, movie-grade replica lightsaber. This wasn't a kid's toy. It was the real deal, complete with sound effects and a glow that could probably cause retinal damage. Before logging it, the staff did the only logical thing. They held an epic, unsanctioned Jedi duel in the hallway. Picture the front desk clerk going full Sith Lord against a bellhop who favored a more defensive stance. It was probably the most exciting thing to happen there all year, right before the weapon of a more civilized age was put in a cardboard box. 7. There are levels of weird, and then there's opening a closet to find yourself staring into the vacant eyes of a bag full of disembodied puppet heads. It was a silent, unblinking audience of clowns, cartoon animals, and things that were vaguely human-shaped. It looked like the aftermath of a failed Muppet casting call or a serial killer's craft project. The owner, a puppeteer in a rush, eventually called to claim them. Sure, a puppeteer. That's a very convenient, family-friendly explanation for something that felt deeply, profoundly unsettling. You can bet they checked under the bed for tiny footprints. 8. This wasn't just a forgotten game. It was evidence of a crime spree. A guest left a small box containing only vintage board game pieces. No boards, no boxes, just the components. There was a tiny metal dog from Monopoly, a lead pipe from Clue, and a handful of Trivial Pursuit wedges. The staff realized they weren't holding lost property. They were holding the toolkit of a monster. This person was clearly a master of petty chaos, traveling the country and systematically dismantling family game nights, one crucial piece at a time. Somewhere out there, a villain is laughing, and 1,000 games of sorry can never be finished. 9. There is a sacred, unspoken contract you enter into when you find someone's personal diary. You absolutely do not read it. For hotel staff, that contract has a tiny footnote that says, upright. Unless it looks really juicy. A guest left a stunning leather-bound journal, not filled with secrets, but with beautifully written accounts of their globe-trotting adventures. After a thorough and professional verification process, the hotel mailed it back. They included a prim note saying, "Thank you for sharing your adventures with us," which is a masterclass in polite espionage. It's the corporate-approved way of saying, "Your description of that market in Marrakesh was superb." 10. If you have a deep-seated fear of things with too many legs and eyes, you may want to skip this one. A housekeeper discovered a cardboard box that seemed to be vibrating with its own dark energy. Inside, a thriving community of live tarantulas. This wasn't a forgotten pet. It was a mobile arachnid death squad. The entire staff was sent into a level of panic usually reserved for nuclear meltdowns. One hero, in a moment of gallows humor, mumbled, "Maybe they're here for a web development seminar?" before sealing the box with enough duct tape to survive re-entry from orbit. That room was likely blessed by a priest and then permanently sealed off. 11. It's one thing to find a forgotten Halloween costume. It's another thing entirely to find evidence that a professional agent of chaos has used your room as a staging ground. Left behind was a full clown costume, complete with those terrifyingly large shoes and a professional-grade makeup kit. The real kicker? The grease paint was partially used. This wasn't for a party, this was operational. A clown was active in that room. You can't help but picture the front desk getting a call at 3 a.m. from a guest complaining about a man in the hallway trying to fit them into a tiny car. 12. There are subtle clues that you've booked the wrong vacation, and then there's leaving your snow skis in a hotel room in Miami. 2 lonely skis were found propped against a wall, staring out at a world of palm trees and blistering humidity. They weren't just forgotten. They were abandoned in a hostile climate, like 2 polar bears stranded on a sandbar. You have to imagine their owner unpacking back in Colorado, experiencing a moment of profound confusion followed by crushing defeat. Those skis became a monument in the lost and found, a testament to someone who navigates travel websites with the grace of a toddler. 13. Leaving behind a tie is understandable. Forgetting your custom-made, intricately carved leather horse saddle with silver inlays is a level of financial nonchalance most of us can only dream of. This wasn't just equipment. It was a work of art that probably cost more than the hotel room itself, and the guests just never came back for it. Did they also forget they owned a horse? Recognizing that they were now the curators of a very specific museum, the hotel proudly displayed the saddle in their lobby. It stands there today, a silent, leathery monument to someone who clearly has too much money and not enough memory. 14. In the grand encyclopedia of bizarre hotel finds, this one occupies its own briny chapter. A housekeeper was confronted by an industrial-sized, almost comically large jar of pickles. This wasn't a snack, it was a pickle arsenal, enough to cater a barbecue for a small army. The staff was left to ponder its purpose. Was it a misguided attempt at a new spa treatment? The primary food source for a doomsday prepper? Or perhaps it was an emotional support jar for someone with very specific needs. It remains one of the hotel's great, cucumber-based, unsolved mysteries. 15. You can learn a lot about how much fun a guest had by what they leave behind. And when they leave behind a set of 3 authentic-looking Viking helmets, complete with the historically inaccurate but mandatory horns, you know they had a legendary night. One can only imagine the kind of pillaging that took place in that room, likely targeting the minibar and the pay-per-view menu. The staff, unable to resist the call of Valhalla, immediately equipped the helmets. For a brief, glorious moment, the third-floor hallway was defended by a trio of Norse warriors on a valiant quest for more tiny bottles of shampoo. 16. A little holiday cheer is always welcome, but context is key. In the dead of a sweltering July, a guest left behind a fully decorated Christmas tree. This wasn't just a sad, bare tree. It was the full package: lights, ornaments, tinsel, and a star. It stood in the corner of the room like a glitch in the seasonal matrix. Was this a Christmas in July party that escalated dramatically? Or the work of the world's most proactive holiday enthusiast, already 6 months ahead of the game? Either way, housekeeping had to perform a full holiday exorcism in the middle of summer. 17. Sometimes the lost and found department has to deal with more than just a forgotten sweater. They have to manage a crisis of mythical proportions. A room was found to be almost entirely occupied by a giant, fully inflated unicorn. This rainbow-colored behemoth wasn't just in the room, it was the room. The staff was faced with a creature of pure magic and a significant logistical problem. The saddest part wasn't figuring out what to do with it, but the slow, wheezing process of its deflation, the tragic, drawn-out death of a majestic beast, and a really good time. 18. Finding a 3-tier, professionally decorated cake in a room is a moment of profound ethical crisis for any hotel staff. Adorned with edible flowers and flawless icing, it looked too important to be real. Was it for a wedding that never happened? An anniversary forgotten? They treated it like a delicate artifact. Finally, they contacted the guest, who responded with a level of casualness that is truly shocking. "Oh, that? Just a practice cake for a show. Go ahead and eat it." In an instant, the staff went from guardians of a precious memory to a pack of vultures descending on a sugar-laden miracle. 19. This wasn't just a lost notebook, it was a plot device. A guest left behind a journal filled not with words, but with page after page of dense, cryptic codes, symbols, and complex mathematical formulas. The staff immediately became MI6. Was their former guest a spy, a rogue mathematician on the verge of a breakthrough, or a conspiracy theorist mapping the global cabal? They were at the epicenter of an international incident. The disappointing truth? It was probably just the world's most complicated Sudoku addiction, but for a few hours the hotel was the set of a Jason Bourne movie. 20. Most hotel rooms smell of industrial-strength cleaner and the faint ghost of 1,000 prior guests. This room, however, smelled like a bustling spice market in Istanbul. Housekeeping discovered a box filled with the kind of exotic spices you only see on cooking shows. Vibrant saffron, fragrant cardamom, and licorice like star anise. It was a sensory journey. The guest, a chef by trade, later called in a complete panic, dramatically wailing, "I've left my culinary treasures behind." You have to respect someone who travels with their own arsenal of flavors, refusing to be subjected to bland, unseasoned hotel food. 21. There are few things that can prepare a housekeeper for walking into a room and seeing a full-sized human skeleton sitting calmly in a chair, as if waiting to file a complaint about the Wi-Fi. The initial reaction was, understandably, sheer terror. After the adrenaline subsided, they realized it was an anatomical model. The guest, a medical student cramming for a major exam, had brought their study buddy along. You have to wonder if they bought it a separate plane ticket. The skeleton was probably the best guest they ever had, quiet, tidy, and didn't rack up a huge minibar bill. 22. In a corner of the room lay the abandoned remnants of a very cozy hobby: a bag of yarn, knitting needles, and a pair of half-finished socks. It was a quiet, domestic scene in an otherwise anonymous space. It looked like someone had been knitting their way through a lonely night on the road, only to be ripped away by a sudden emergency. When the owner called, they had a good sense of humor about it, saying, "Looks like I knitted myself into a tight schedule and forgot everything." Those lonely unfinished socks became a woolly monument to a project that was loved, then lost. 23. Every parent's worst nightmare became a housekeeper's reality. A floor carpeted with thousands of loose Lego bricks. It was a colorful, plastic minefield where one wrong step could result in a level of pain that defies physics. The guest, presumably an adult Lego enthusiast or a parent who had just given up, had left the chaotic aftermath of a major building session. The hotel staff, showing the courage of bomb disposal experts, spent hours carefully picking up every single piece. The best part? The relieved joke from one of them. "At least we didn't step on any." A true miracle. 24. Wedged between the mattress and the bed frame, a housekeeper found a relic from a bygone era. A high school yearbook from the 1980s. It was a time capsule filled with feathered hair and heartfelt, gloriously cheesy messages like "Stay cool forever" and "Don't ever change." The guest, a man in his late 50s, called to retrieve it. He explained he'd brought it along to revisit some old memories. It's a beautifully poignant image. A man trying to reconnect with his past, only to literally leave it behind in a hotel room. 25. Forget a mint on the pillow. This room came with a live parrot. A real, living, squawking parrot was found perched on the minibar, looking like it owned the place. The staff, after recovering from the shock, were trying to figure out what to do when the parrot broke the silence by yelling, "Room service!" in a shockingly clear voice. This wasn't just a bird, it was a comedian. They nicknamed it Captain Squawk, and for the rest of the day, it entertained them by demanding crackers and whistling at anyone who walked by. It was the most chaotic and memorable complaint-free guest they ever had. 26. Some people leave slippers. One guest left behind a pair of giant, fuzzy bunny slippers, so enormous they could have been used as canoes. These things were monstrous, plush foot holsters that seemed to defy all logic of practical footwear. You could probably fit a small child in each one. The staff, being only human, couldn't resist the temptation. For a few glorious minutes, the sterile hotel hallway was graced by the sight of a grown adult shuffling along in slippers the size of throw pillows, a moment of pure, unadulterated joy. 27. Finding a musical instrument is one thing. Finding a set of bagpipes is an entirely different level of cultural discovery. It was just leaning against a chair, a dormant beast of wood, tartan, and leather, silently threatening to unleash a sound that could shatter windows and summon the ghost of William Wallace. Wisely, no one on the staff dared to even touch it, let alone try to play it. The potential for catastrophic, deafening noise was too great. As one relieved staff member put it, at least it wasn't a full drum kit. A very fair point. 28. In what could either be a piece of avant-garde art or the beginning of a very strange crime, housekeeping found 10 pristine bowling pins set up in a perfect triangle in the corner of the room. There was no bowling ball, no scuff marks, nothing to indicate a game had been played. They were just there. A silent, stoic formation. Was the guest practicing their setup? Were they a bowling pin salesman? Or were they just a very niche interior decorator? The mystery of the missing ball and the perfectly placed pins haunted the staff for weeks. 29. A forgotten cooler is usually a minor annoyance filled with leftover sandwiches. This cooler, however, was filled with a collection of unlabeled jars containing mysterious, colorful liquids. It looked less like someone's lunch and more like the portable lab of a mad scientist. The staff was understandably hesitant to even open it. The guest, a biologist, eventually called in a sheer panic and rushed back. Turns out they were experimental samples for a major research project. For a few hours, the hotel was unknowingly storing either the next great scientific breakthrough or the start of a zombie apocalypse. 30. On the desk, like a monument to abandoned ambition, sat a half-assembled DIY robot kit. Wires and circuit boards were splayed out next to scribbled instructions, looking like the creator was on the verge of bringing their mechanical child to life. And then, they just checked out. Did they run out of time? Did they rage quit after realizing they put the legs on backward? The little unfinished robot sat there, a sad symbol of a dream deferred, forever waiting for a master who would never return to give it the gift of movement, or at least a head. 31. Imagine the scene. A housekeeper opens a briefcase and finds it filled to the brim with stacks of cash, neatly bundled. For a split second, they think their life is about to change forever. They're quitting, buying an island, telling their boss exactly what they think of them. Then comes the soul-crushing realization. It's all monopoly money, a fortune in fake bills. The guest either had a very intense game night planned or was using it to practice for a future life of crime. It was the most disappointing get-rich-quick scheme in the history of hospitality. 32. In a shocking twist from the monopoly money incident, one guest left behind a Fender guitar that was very, very real. And not just any guitar, it was covered in signatures from a laundry list of rock and roll legends. This wasn't just an instrument, it was a piece of music history. The owner, realizing their catastrophic mistake, rushed back within hours, breathless and panicked, shouting, "That's my retirement plan you're holding." The staff had unknowingly been babysitting an item worth more than their combined annual salaries. 33. You can tell a lot about a person's personality from their footwear. And when that footwear is a pair of neon pink roller skates with wheels that light up, you know you're dealing with a fun person. These weren't just skates, they were portable disco parties for your feet. The temptation was too much for the housekeeping staff to bear. Before logging them into the Lost and Found, they took them for a test spin, gliding down the empty hallway like a silent, flashing specter of the 1980s. It was probably the highlight of their shift. 34. Hidden in a closet, staff found a small, elegant wooden box. It didn't contain jewelry or money, but something far more civilized. A collection of rare and exotic teas from all over the world. Each tin was beautifully labeled: Rare Darjeeling, Vibrant Matcha, Smoky Lapsang Souchong. There were even handwritten notes detailing the perfect brewing times. This was the collection of a true connoisseur, a person who took their tea with the seriousness of a wine collector. It felt less like lost property and more like stumbling upon the personal stash of royalty. 35. Just when you think you've seen it all in the hospitality industry, the drunks, the divas, the destroyers of rooms, a guest checks out and leaves a farm animal on their balcony. Not a dog, not a cat, a live goat. It was found calmly nibbling on the curtains, as if it had ordered them from room service. When contacted, the owner had the gall to calmly explain it was their emotional support goat. You have to admire the sheer, unadulterated confidence. I can only imagine the conversation at the front desk when the hotel manager had to officially draft a new pet policy that specifically, and perhaps in all capital letters, excluded livestock. 36. Amidst the chaos of forgotten electronics and mundane clothing, one housekeeper found a small, poignant scene. A pair of delicate, well-worn ballet slippers lay next to a music box that was still playing a tinkling version of Swan Lake. These weren't just shoes. They were artifacts of a life dedicated to art. The owner, a professional ballerina, was eternally grateful when she called, explaining, "Those slippers have danced on stages all over the world." For a moment, that generic hotel room was transformed into a backstage dressing room, holding the quiet, exhausted magic of 1,000 performances. 37. Some people worry about forgetting their passport. Others have a much more pressing fear: the terror of encountering unseasoned food. A guest left behind a bag containing over 30 different bottles of hot sauce. It was a veritable library of pain, ranging from a gentle jalapeno to sauces with names that sounded like chemical weapons. The staff pictured the owner treating every meal like a personal challenge, a culinary dare. You have to respect the commitment. This person was not going to let a bland hotel breakfast ruin their day. They came armed for a Scoville scale war. 38. Underneath a bed, a housekeeper found a heavy sack that clinked with possibility. It was filled with over 50 random keys of every imaginable shape and size. There were modern car keys, old-timey skeleton keys, and tiny mysterious keys for padlocks that probably haven't existed for a century. None of them worked on any door in the hotel. It was the toolkit of a master locksmith, a prolific thief, or more likely, a very confused janitor from another building. For a day, the staff held the potential to unlock something, somewhere. They just had no idea what. 39. The bathroom looked like it had been the site of a very tiny, very squeaky convention. Hundreds of rubber ducks were scattered everywhere. They weren't a uniform flock either. This was a diverse population of pirate ducks, superhero ducks, and even an Elvis Presley duck. It was a scene of profound, joyful absurdity. Instead of just bagging them up, the staff took the time to arrange them all in a neat line around the tub, creating a duck parade. It was probably the happiest cleanup job in the hotel's history, a brief moment of plastic, squeaking zen. 40. One guest decided their hotel room needed a little more personality, so they decorated it with an army of over 200 bobbleheads. Every flat surface, the desk, the nightstand, the television, was covered with nodding, spring-loaded figurines. They didn't even take them when they left. A note was left behind that read, "Sorry I couldn't take them all with me. Hope they bring you joy." The staff were now the reluctant curators of a bobblehead museum. For the rest of the day, every conversation at the front desk was silently judged by a nodding audience of tiny athletes and cartoon characters. 41. On the nightstand, propped up as if for display, was a framed photograph of a completely random family. It was a classic, slightly awkward portrait from the early 2000s. A dad in a bad sweater, a mom with big hair, and two kids with forced smiles. No one on the hotel staff recognized them, and the guest who checked out was traveling alone. Was it a prank? A strange source of comfort? Or was the guest a spy who used it as a signal? The photo was placed in Lost and Found, a perfect, smiling family waiting for a stranger to claim them. 42. Forget building a pillow fort. One tech-savvy guest set up a miniature factory in their room. Housekeeping walked in to find a working 3D printer on the desk, humming away as it meticulously finished printing a tiny, intricate model of the Eiffel Tower. It was still warm. For a moment, it felt like they had walked into a sci-fi movie where inanimate objects create themselves. You have to award bonus points for sheer audacity. Who goes on vacation and thinks, "You know what I need? A portable manufacturing plant to produce small plastic trinkets." 43. An artist's studio is a sacred space, but apparently, a hotel room is a decent substitute. A guest left behind a stack of canvases, each one an unfinished painting. There were half-completed landscapes, the beginnings of a cityscape, and a few chaotic abstract designs. It was a gallery of abandoned ideas. When the artist was contacted, they just sighed and said they were trying out some new techniques and would have to start over. That hotel room became a temporary graveyard for art, a silent testament to creative experiments that were loved, then left behind. 44. Lost and Found is usually equipped to handle jackets and wallets. It is not equipped to handle a giant plush shark that is roughly the size of a grown man. This thing was a behemoth, a fluffy jaws that barely fit through the door. It wasn't just a toy, it was a piece of furniture. The staff had a field day with it. One joked they should keep it in the lobby for guests who complain about the lack of a pool. Just point to the shark and say, "We provide the ocean vibes, you provide the imagination." 45. Tucked under the pillow, housekeeping found a relic from a forgotten technological era, a Sony Walkman. But the real treasure was inside, a cassette tape with jams for Brenda, meticulously handwritten on the label. This wasn't just a music player, it was a time capsule of someone's emotions, a carefully curated soundtrack from a bygone relationship. The staff was left to wonder about Brenda. Did she ever get the tape? Did she like the jams? The urge to press play and listen to the audio ghost of a 90s romance was almost unbearable. 46. You brace yourself for a lot of strange things in the Lost and Found, but a bag of human teeth is probably not on the list. A small black pouch was found containing several gold teeth. Actual, valuable, dental work. The staff's imaginations ran wild. Was it a dentist who misplaced some very expensive hardware? A family heirloom from a grandparent with a flashy smile? Or was it the buried treasure of a very niche pirate who only plundered from people's mouths? The possibilities were both fascinating and deeply disturbing. 47. Sitting on the desk in pristine condition was a fully constructed gingerbread house. This wasn't some sloppy kid's project. It was an architectural masterpiece of cookie and icing, complete with candy cane fences and gumdrop shingles. It was so perfect, the staff briefly considered entering it into a local baking competition. But then they realized the terrible truth. It was a beautiful, delicious prisoner, too fragile to be moved without crumbling into a pile of festive, sugary rubble. It was admired, then sadly disposed of. 48. It looked like a Mardi Gras parade had exploded inside the room. Thousands of colorful plastic beads were draped over every piece of furniture and scattered across the floor. The guest had apparently brought the entire spirit of New Orleans with them and then left the evidence behind. The cleanup crew, wading through a sea of purple, green, and gold, couldn't help but joke that they had just missed the single greatest party in the hotel's history. You could almost hear the faint sound of jazz music and poor decisions. 49. This discovery made the front desk staff's hearts stop. A guest left behind a box of signed baseballs. Not just any signatures either. The collection included certified autographs from legends like Babe Ruth and Mickey Mantle. This wasn't just sports memorabilia. It was a significant chunk of American history worth a staggering amount of money. The staff treated the box with the reverence of a holy relic, locking it in the main safe until the frantic owner returned, profusely thanking them for saving his entire life's collection from being lost forever. Okay, now for a little group confession. We've all found something. Maybe not a taxidermied alligator in a hotel, but something. A $20 bill on the street, a forgotten jacket, someone's unattended fries. What's the most valuable or strangest thing you've ever found and just kept? Your secret's safe with the thousands of strangers in the comments. While you're unburdening your soul, hit the like button as a sign of good faith and subscribe for more stories that will make you feel better about your own life choices.